here's what I know. Someone's going to have to start to fight for Nebraska, all right? So I'm here to fight for Nebraska. And finally, the team grows up. It's what people always ask me about year 3. Finally, the team grows up, and they're like, well, I got to go make the play.
It's time to join the Husker Huddle with Nick Handley and Grant Hansen.
Hey there, it is another Husker Huddle podcast, and it is the best Husker Huddle podcast yet because we have a game that we're about ready to talk about because it is game week. It's Nebraska, Cincinnati. It's happening right now. The start of college football season.
We've made it.
We saw a wild one out in Dublin, and then, of course, the week in football, not just in college football, was rocked with amazing news of Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce.
This is bad.
It's bad? Oh.
Yeah, I mean, come on. We start the show with, well, she could be here. Or do we think she'll be at the game tonight?
Now, Travis Kelce confirmed he would be here.
But will Taylor be with? See, that's the thing.
Now you're engaged. You spend more time?
Will I, in the press box, see Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce together walking around? I don't know how things are structured in Chiefs Kingdom.
Just keep your eye on that.
Ties to the suites up there.
That little tunnel that takes the golf cart takes Taylor to the elevators.
She could be there.
So we'll see.
People, this is firmly on the table.
That's right. No. We're really going to talk about Cincinnati, Nebraska because it is the start of the college football season. There is huge games. We've got LSU Clemson. We've got Ohio State, Texas. We'll give you our thoughts on those as well. Mm-hmm. Grant caught up with a really good conversation with Ceyair Wright, a guy that's just a fun dude to talk to.
Yes, he is.
All three of us were just kind of BSing before we even had the camera rolling.
He's a good dude.
One. Yeah, and excited to see what he can do in this Nebraska defense. Also going to be talking to Mitch Sherman of The Athletic, get his thoughts on what he's taken from fall camp and what we can apply to this game against Cincinnati for Nebraska, the kickoff of the 2025 season and that very pivotal year 3 for Matt Rule and looking for all of those improvements and everything to, dare I say, pop finally for Nebraska in a good way.
Is this the year?
Yes, absolutely. And again, we appreciate you checking out the Husker Huddle podcast, whether you are a YouTube subscriber on Performance Podcast or if you're checking it out wherever you get your podcasts. Of course, we should say
Spotify,
YouTube,
Apple,
we should say YouTube Music,
YouTube,
too.
yeah, all that. Also, hey, make sure, it was a little bit of a tight turnaround this week, but make sure you get your questions in for next week's mailbag. We'll do one every week. To do that, just email us at huskerhuddle@myboomerradio.com. huskerhuddle@myboomerradio.com. We'll flash it on the screen a couple of times throughout the show, along with our Twitter handles and the signals that you can listen to the Husker game if you're in Omaha today. Or if you are down in KC and you want to listen online, you can just go to myboomerradio.com and click on the stream section. There'll be a Husker stream there where you can listen there. We please encourage you to do that and to listen on our signals here in Omaha. If you want to listen on 1490, that's a good bet.
Yes.
660, also a good bet. And 97.3 on the FM side. So those are your signals for Husker football. Pregame starts at 4 o'clock on 1490,
Yes,
I think.
it does.
So this is it. We are here, and now it's time for Prime Cuts.
Prime Cuts brought to you by Omaha Steaks. Here we go.
Yeah, it's a tremendous honor to be able to represent this football team and represent, honestly, not even the guys here right now, but everyone that came before us. Every single person that's walked through these doors, names up in the stadium, championships that have been won, and to be able to, wear a C on my jersey. It's a lot more than just the patch. It's more of the blood, sweat, and tears that I had with these guys.
Yeah, he retired our center a couple years ago, so I know he was battling some things last year, but I certainly know what he's capable of. I've seen it up close and personal for a couple of times, so he's a load in there. We've been challenging, especially our inside guys, to understand what they're about to face. But I mean, we know, Big Ten football, that's going to be pretty much a weekly thing, so this would be a good test for us week 1.
He's trying to get and fight for every yard, so you can tell he's tough and competitive, which I think we've done a good job of making sure that our players see that and know that. You always got to know the type of animal you're hunting, so to speak, and he's big, strong, runs hard, he's tough. He delivers the blow more so than he takes hits. So that's a challenge physically, that we've got to answer early to make sure that that doesn't get out of hand.
It's night and day, you know. I feel like that was a good team, but I feel like this is a great team that I'm on. You know, loved all those guys that were on that team, but, you know, I feel like it's definitely a different feeling around here in the building. Just on a day-to-day basis, everybody has the same goal, and we're all enforcing the same standards. So, you know, it's really exciting.
Just challenging the guys. Like, we want to go play this game one snap at a time with intentional focus, neutral mindset, and attack each play. Not worry about what the score is. Just worry about how we're playing, and then deal with how we have to play. You know, adjust to the situation in the fourth quarter. But we've worked on this for a long time. We've worked on it for 3 years. So I'd like to see it come to fruition now, where we just go out there and play with a ruthless mindset.
That's our Prime Cuts, brought to you by Omaha Steaks. Hey, there's nothing quite like a Labor Day cookout to end the summer with a sizzle. And right now, it's the perfect time to stock up and celebrate with the exceptional handcrafted flavor and convenience of Omaha Steaks. We welcome Omaha Steaks, a new partner.
Welcome to the Huddle,
on
Omaha Steaks.
Yes. So a lot to take in there, and you heard from all of the major players when it comes to the decision-making between Dana Holgorsen, John Butler, and Matt Rule. One of the things, I want to start with John Butler, with what he said about Sorsby and what Nebraska defensively is going to expect from the quarterback of Cincinnati. And this is where I think Nebraska defensively is going to have moments in this game where you're thinking, where's the containment? Get after the guy. And
sure,
with this defensive line too still coming together, I think it's okay that there might be a busted assignment here and there. But Brendan Sorsby is the one guy that I think is that X factor of, even if the traditional running game isn't necessarily there for Cincinnati, that ability to extend plays and bring a physical level of the quarterback play against this defense. This is where I think Cincinnati is going to be able, the success that they can have in this game, I think it's going to come from that element right there that John Butler talked about.
And what does it come back to? I mean, it comes back to dealing with physicality, with tackling, the importance of wrapping up, guys rallying to the football, keeping contained on Sorsby, all these fundamental things. I mean, I'll have eyes on that throughout the game. That's one of the things that I'll be most intrigued to see on the defensive side of the ball, in addition to getting after the passer. Can they rush the passer effectively? Can they get home with 4 or 3, if by some miracle? So yeah, I like where your head's at there. And again, can you maybe get a couple of guys if he tries to extend a play too much, punch him for the football?
Yeah.
That sort of thing.
That's risk reward without question, the way that Sorsby plays.
Yes. And it'll be important for Nebraska to get Cincinnati behind the sticks early. Mm-hmm. Which, I mean, obviously it is anytime you're looking at things from a defensive perspective, but the more 3rd and longs you can get Nebraska, or rather Cincinnati, in as opposed to 3rd and 4, okay, they can still pass it here. They could do a design quarterback run, still scramble for a first down, as opposed to 3rd and 10, 3rd and 12, 3rd and 16. You make the offense, of course, a lot less multiple.
And this is another part of that concern for me is you get them in that down and distance that you want as a defense, third and long, and secondary's doing everything they can. And then all of a sudden Sorsby extends it, gets the necessary yardage. You deflate the defense a little bit. So getting off the field on 3rd down obviously is big. The other part of, speaking of the defense of Cincinnati, and we know about Dante Corleone, I thought what Holgorsen had to say, he single-handedly forced a 3 and out when he went up against them the last time.
And retired our center.
Yeah, he retired our center, and he single-handedly caused a 3 and out, made all 3 plays, was disruptive. But I also like what Dana Holgorsen was saying when we were listening to him on Monday, and that was the interior, guys like Rocco Spindler, guys like Justin Evans, guys like Henry Letufsky, they're chomping at the bit for that challenge. It's not we respect him. We're like, this is something they understand. If they can neutralize Corleone, that this offense is going to be able to do what they want to do at the line of scrimmage.
What's fascinating to me, and Matt Rule made a point about this on Tuesday when he was talking about, look, I think there's just this perception out there that the guys that we bring in through the transfer portal are inherently upgrades of the guys that we already have. Mm-hmm. And so I think that's funny because as you think about Corleone, I think like initially I was fighting that a little bit as well because my head immediately goes to Rocco Spindler. Oh, well, they'll certainly not put him on the side of the Notre Dame transfer who just played in the national championship game. They'll put him over Henry Letofsky. And we talked to him this week. That is a dude who is a very large and imposing figure that it doesn't necessarily come across how big he is until you're basically standing right next to him. So, he should be able to handle him too. And Justin Evans should be able to handle him. And if you don't have those things working in tandem, I guess it doesn't all ride on this year, but there are going to be solid defensive tackles that you will face. That was the other part of Holgerson's answer throughout the entirety of your Big Ten schedule. Right. So if you really just can't handle Dante Corleone right now, that could be an alarming thing for the rest of the road.
The excitement factor, and Matt Rule talked about it, and just what this team has gone through in fall camp. And that was a lot of what we heard the day before the game when Matt Rule had his last media availability of just there's a collective confidence, but it's been a cool confidence. I think that started with Matt Rule. I think that started with the coaches. They've stopped short of overly praising a lot of guys, but I think that they've been very complimentary where they feel it's warranted without, throwing flowers at everyone's feet without kicking the ball off. So I think that you could tell the coaches and the players. There's a part where Matt Rule said that, he's stopping practices a little bit short here because he's seen enough. And it's not the whole, oh my God, I've seen enough. This is awful. No, it's and
we're going to stop the show short today because I'm just kidding.
We've said enough.
Seen enough.
You've probably seen enough at this point too.
No.
But yeah, I mean, it is kind of interesting that
everybody's kind of there.
Absolutely. And I think you had a different tone from Matt Rule the last 2 years, trying to squeeze every bit of preparation that they could leading up to that first week. And it's not that they're under preparing, but they feel like they have a pretty strong grasp of what they're about, at least going into this game.
For sure.
Of what they are right now.
And this is it, right? Like, this is everything the fan base has been building towards. And this is what Matt Rule and the Huskers have been building towards since 2022, since that season, that disaster in Ireland that, Buford was a part of and he spoke about in there, right? Like, they've been building towards this for 3 years. Like, it's not just a spring ball of work that's gone into this or a fall camp of work that's gone into this. For Matt Rule, for this coaching staff, for the players that have been there since 2022 and before, for the fan base, this is 3 years of anticipation for certainly, for the football team, for work that's been building all up to this game in Cincinnati. And it's like, this is the year that's supposed to be the breakthrough year. And so I thought that bite did a really, really good job of encapsulating that.
Every captain is an upperclassman with the exception of one.
Yes.
And I don't think it's any surprise to Husker Nation that one underclassman who doesn't carry himself like an underclassman is Dylan Raiola. And you can tell, though, for a guy that has experienced so much in the year and a half that he has been at Nebraska, there's authenticity on how much you could tell that meant to him.
For sure.
And being a captain. And I don't want to say he felt entitled to be one. I don't think he was probably overly shocked by it because I think he understands the way. I mean, we've talked to offensive linemen. We've talked to guys like Rocco Spindler that have played with different quarterbacks. Henry Letofsky, who has seen a couple of quarterbacks in his time as well. Dane Key. The way that they talk about him is not how you would talk about a guy in his true sophomore year.
100%. And, the other interesting piece of this, this is also cut for time, but this is not the usual shtick for Matt Rule. In fact, it's the opposite, that there aren't captains. And, so for him to do this, that's a change for him from the norm. I think it kind of maybe puts some of the fan base, whatever fraction of the fan base was worried that Dylan Raiola hadn't received a single digit, I think has been put at ease a little bit by this. Because there was that certain level of question. Everybody assumed he was going to get number one. Ceyair Wright earns that jersey. And there was part of the fan base I was like, man, does that say anything about Dylan Raiola that his teammates didn't vote him a single digit, and here he is with the captain C on his shoulder when he goes in at Arrowhead Stadium this week.
Yeah, some good stuff there. Again, that is our Prime Cuts. We're going to be talking to Mitch Sherman, but speaking of Prime Cuts, we want to talk about our new partners here on the Husker Huddle.
Yes.
And Omaha Steaks. And I got a little excited, Grant, when my first box showed up. We had some bacon wrap fillets that my wife and I fired up. In fact, last night, they grill so easy. And the meat is as good as you're going to have. And this is something that I've known to love and expect out of Omaha Steaks. Their reputation is obviously a very strong one, but when you cut into it for the first time, maybe it's been a long time, or maybe you're a regular who's cooking them up every night or every week, you are going to be reminded constantly of the tenderness of those cuts and the quality that goes into every product from Omaha Steaks.
Quality is the word that I think I probably associate with Omaha Steaks the most. And it's quality that is not this ethereal sort of thing that we sometimes associate with certain businesses. This is actual thing. This is a quality that you can quite literally taste and enjoy over and over and over again. And the Omaha Steaks seasoning, sometimes that flies under the radar a little bit. Put some of that on some hamburgers. Doesn't necessarily have to go on steaks. It's phenomenal. Both. There's so much for anybody who has a grill or a pan or likes food available at Omaha Steaks. And we've got some great opportunities for you to knock off some pesos on your next deal.
Absolutely. Use the promo code HUDDLE, by the way.
Yes.
Go to omahasteaks.com and you can get a nice little deal right there. If you just get fired up for fall grilling with Omaha Steaks, visit omahasteaks.com for 50% off site-wide during their Labor Day sale. And for an extra $35 off, use the promo code HUDDLE at checkout. That's HUDDLE. You know, Husker Huddle. Use the promo code HUDDLE at checkout.
Yeah, folks, that's 50% off at omahasteaks.com right now, which is a great deal. An extra $35 off on top of that with promo code HUDDLE at checkout. And you can see the website for further details. Strike while the iron is hot, people, because you can get ahead on maybe some Christmas shopping right now. There is a lot of great opportunity at Omaha Steaks.
I like it. The grilled hot, the cast iron, the skillet.
What can I say? I'm a wordsmith.
Yes, there you go. Well, I feel like if we're going to have game week, then what better way to kick off game week, get ready for Nebraska, Cincinnati, than talking to one of the very best covering not only the Husker football beat, but college football in his journey. And that is Mitch Sherman with The Athletic. You see him on podcasts. You see him on the Locked On podcast with Connor Happer. You see him in The Athletic, or I guess you read him in The Athletic too. But wherever there's Husker football news breaking, Mitch Sherman is one of the very best, breaking it down, talking about it, and we're happy to have him on the Husker Huddle. So, Mitch, I mean, it's here, and this has been really fascinating to watch. I think this fall camp develop into what I think is, I'm labeling this buzz as tangible excitement. I think there's tangible excitement for this 2025 Nebraska team. I'm curious if you're sensing something similar with this group.
Yeah. First, good to be with you, Nick and Grant. I am. You have to separate it a little bit from what's the norm, and I try to determine if this feeling as Nebraska gets ready to open the season is something that we experience every year, or if there are elements this season that are different. And the players and the coaches, they talk a optimistic game in August, I think, every year, and you find that wherever you go in college football. So try to look deeper and determine if there's reason for that. And I believe that there is with this team. I think there are a lot of pieces within the roster that are improved in some ways dramatically from the product that we saw on the field a year ago. There are obviously questions. This is not 1995, but Nebraska, I think, is clearly trending up as a college football program. the job that Matt Rule has done to instill confidence in this team since they all reconvened at the end of July, I think is notable. It was an effort that it was something that he put at the top of his list from day one with this 2025 team. I think in part because as a response to the way things have gone through his first 2 seasons. We've seen Nebraska struggle in that department, fail to close out close games, including the last time we saw this team in the regular season. So, to me, many of the signs point up for Nebraska in 2025. I think that this is going to be Matt Rule's best team yet in Lincoln.
Mitch, as we look ahead to that Cincinnati game on Thursday night, where do you feel like the Bearcats will stress Nebraska the most?
Yeah, I mean, the first place I would probably look is with Cincinnati's going to try to run the football, both with its quarterback, Brendan Sorsby, and with the running backs that Cincinnati brings to Arrowhead Stadium. For me, a question about this Nebraska team, something that John Butler and his defense are going to have to answer, certainly when they get into the Big Ten, and probably right from the beginning on Thursday night, is their ability to be big up front and stop the run and to be a physical team at the line of scrimmage. There are pass rushers in this group, and I think Nebraska has the way that Nebraska's pass rushers have come along since the spring, to me, has been one of the bigger stories. And this is, again, based on the commentary that we hear from coaches and players. But, generally it's not wise for them to speak a big game about players, and, because the truth is about to be revealed. So when you hear that a player like Williams Winery, the transfer from Missouri, who in the spring it looked like was maybe a year off, or part of a year off at least, from becoming a difference maker. When you see him at the top on the top line of the depth chart, whether he starts or not, and it looks like Cam Lenhart will start at that position. He got the black practice jersey this week, but the fact that Winery is up there, to me, indicates a lot of growth on his part. Keona Davis is also listed at the top of the depth chart, and that's encouraging on the defensive line for Nebraska. But the specialty of those two, despite their size at 6'7", 6'5", 265, 275, their specialty is as athletes and as pass rushers. They're dynamic in being able to get to the quarterback. So how does that translate for the defensive line in being able to stop the run? I like what Elijah Judy can bring. I like what Riley Van Poppel can bring. I think Cam Lenhart is a more well-rounded defensive end. Nebraska's going to use its jack linebacker position for sure to bolster its strength at the line of scrimmage, but it's it's one of the positions. It's probably the position that features the least amount of experience, and it's something that Nebraska's going to have to prove it can do before it gets into the Big Ten, starting off with Michigan, which year after year after year, no matter what the condition of that program is, and it seems to be trending up too, based on the end of last season, is going to pose a big physical test. So those tests are coming, and I think Thursday night will be along those lines for the D-line.
Mitch Sherman with The Athletic joining us here on the Husker Huddle podcast. So, Mitch, I want to move over to the offensive side of it. We saw a glimpse of Dana Holgorsen with several pieces of the current offense, but it was a pared down offense, as we know. Now he's had the winter, he's had spring ball, he's had fall camp. I'm curious, going into Nebraska, Cincinnati, what are you looking for the most out of this Dana Holgorsen-led offense?
I want to see if their receivers can get some separation. That's Nebraska's. It's no secret. Nebraska's going to play to its strengths. I think the Huskers have a very good running back in Emmett Johnson, and we'll see about the depth behind him. I've heard good things this camp, but much like the defensive line, it's largely unproven at the running back spot as far as the depth goes. Nevertheless, the strength of this offense is going to ride on Dylan Raiola's shoulders, and specifically his right arm. Nebraska struggled at times last year, even with the veterans that it brought in from the portal and Jamal Banks and Isaiah Nair, to get separation in moments that mattered in big games. And it limited Raiola's ability to go down the field, which is a strength of his. They at times struggled to catch contested balls and deal with the physicality that came with the Big Ten opponents brought. So with the changes that Nebraska's made to its offensive mentality under Dana Holgorsen, with the addition of Da'Keel Shorts as a more seasoned wide receivers coach, and then with the transfer portal ads of Dane Key and Isaiah Hunter, in particular, the growth of Ja'Cory Barney from year 1 to year 2 in this system, the addition of Cortez Mills as a mature freshman wide receiver, Janiron Bonner's continued improvement or continued movement forward in this program and the way that they want to use him as a versatile piece. Quinn Clark, I could go on about the players and the way that they feel about the improvement that Nebraska's receiving group has made. I'm interested to see right off the bat what happens. Cincinnati struggled in that area last year to cover and reinforced its own program through the transfer portal in that area. So how does Nebraska get off the line of scrimmage with these receivers, several of whom are like Hunter and Bonner are big and physical? How do they create separation? What can they do to get open down the field and give Nebraska the kind of big playability in the passing game that Raiola can offer, and also will be essential to opening up lanes for Emmett Johnson in the run game?
Mitch, I'd like to take a quick volleyball detour here to Pinnacle Bank Arena from this past weekend at the AVCA First Serve, and Nebraska takes down number 3 Pitt in 4 sets to open the DBK era, and then proceeds to follow that up with a pretty smooth handling of number 6 Stanford on Sunday. What impressed you most about this Nebraska squad, and what do you make of Danny's answer about just sort of the evolution of the sport from her, time 20 plus years ago playing at the Coliseum to what we saw with the pomp and circumstance at PBA this past weekend?
Yeah, I was lucky enough to have seen her play as a college player and be around those teams early in the John Cook era when they were at the Coliseum. 4,000 fans packed in there. It was an incredible environment. But you have almost 4 times that amount in PBA last weekend, and the lights and the technology and the new scoreboard and everything around the event that went into producing it, with the AVCA coming in and so many great teams that came to Lincoln and Sioux City this past weekend. Volleyball is night and day different from what it was when Danny was a player, and she's not that old. Like, she just turned 40, so the sport is experiencing meteoric growth, and that was absolutely on display, both as far as the environment at Pinnacle Bank Arena and the level of play, the type of play that you saw on the court. That system that Danny runs, with some of the creativity that she brings to the Nebraska offensive flow. Nebraska's in the later years under John Cook, like the golden years of Nebraska volleyball, since 2016, 2017, Nebraska's been in the Final Four just about every year, and it's been defined by great defense, blocking, the back row, and that continued on the first weekend of play this year, but they added in an element offensively that we haven't often seen, and that's what's so scary and so dynamic about this team. In addition to their depth and just their overall talent, is the way that they play the game. And it's early. We'll see how things go when they start playing the Wisconsins and Penn States of the world, and Nebraska has been more scouted, but Pitt knew Danny's system well. They played her former team many times, so it shouldn't have been difficult for Pitt to scout what Nebraska wanted to do. Stanford certainly is familiar with that style of volleyball, and they were unstoppable at times in those first 2 matches. So the season is very young, but this is going to be a tough team to derail. Anything short of playing for the national championship in December is absolutely going to be a disappointment. I would say anything short of winning the national championship in December will absolutely be a disappointment for this group. Not to say that they're going to do that. There will be big challenges out there for them, but that's where the bar is set.
Speaking of where the bar is set, obviously it's a different type of climb for the Nebraska football team to the volleyball team, and we know where that expectation lies on the hardwood for volleyball as opposed to the field for Nebraska football. But I want to bounce back there before we have a chance to wrap up with you, and that is, if you do look at what a successful season is going to look like for Nebraska, and especially exponential growth with guys that we need to see major growth from, like a Dylan Raiola, if this career at Nebraska is going to be what we thought it was when he decided to flip from Georgia to Nebraska, but also just this team in the year 3 that we always hear about, Matt Rule at Temple, Matt Rule at Baylor. A lot of people have their eyes on this football team from a national standpoint too. To you, Mitch, what is success for this football program in 2025?
It always comes back to wins and the bottom line. So that's going to be the number one factor that you use to judge this team, is how many games does it win? Where does it finish in the Big Ten? Can it get itself into the conversation to contend for the college football playoff conversation? So that's it. But you can go deeper, and it's been too long for Nebraska since it punched above its weight and won games against ranked teams and was considered one of those elite programs nationally. So, not all 9-3s or 8-4s are created equal. And I think that some of the way that this team is judged at the end has to do with more than just the number of games that it wins. Like, it's the number one benchmark. But in addition to that, how does Nebraska look in games against Michigan and Penn State? What happens this year against Iowa when it's close, and it will be close. Like, it's just the way Iowa plays. Iowa can play
absolutely
just about any team in the Big Ten. Now on a one-off, they might get blown out by an Ohio State, but those games are few and far between. So the expectation going in to any game for Nebraska against that kind of an opponent in November is that it's going to be close at the end, and far more often than not, those games have fallen against Nebraska in recent years. They look at Nebraska's performances in overtime over the last decade, and it's abysmal.
Do we have
That's
to?
probably not even a strong enough word to describe the way it's gone. So I look at areas like that.
Yeah.
Does Nebraska win a game that it's not expected to win? How does it perform against a top 10 or top 5 team when it goes to Penn State? What happens at the end against Iowa when it comes down to the fourth quarter? If they get into an overtime game against a team like UCLA or Michigan State, how does it go? Can they move the football? Can they get first downs? Can they score points in overtime? Like, can they function like I think the way that Matt Rule expects this team to do? So those are all factors in addition to the main one, which is just how many games do they win.
Mm-hmm.
Last one here for you, Mitch. I know we're about out of time, but I had to ask, are you taking Terry Braden's advice? Are you getting Gates barbecue this weekend? And or if not, what barbecue is your vibe in Kansas City?
I mean, you can't go wrong with Gates, right? Like, Gates is the old standard, Gates and Arthur Bryant's. So it's a possibility. I don't know, Grant. Like, it's going to depend on my schedule and what time I make it into town, and do I want to connect with some friends? And if that's the case, then do we pick barbecue? What part of town are we in? Like, I know we're very close to the game, but I still have some decisions that need to be made about, like, what my Thursday looks like, and then I don't know how much time I'm going to spend there Friday. I'd say my favorite right now is probably Q39 in across the board of Kansas City barbecue. I will say that I got a recommendation. Gosh, I don't know if I want to reveal this because I'm going to do this on my podcast with Connor on Wednesday. But so I'll tease that. But I got a recommendation from somebody inside the Nebraska program with deep connections to Kansas City, and it is not Terry Braden and Gates. And it was a much different answer than what Terry. You can't go wrong with his answer. Although I do question his decision to not have sauce.
No sauce.
Gates,
Yeah. What's up with that?
Gates sauce is I get it. You know, savor the meat. They have great barbecue meat. You get some brisket or burn-ins, and it's good enough on its own. Okay, but I think it's better with the sauce. I will say that I'm intrigued by this recommendation that I received from a member of Matt Rule's staff who we haven't heard from at the press conference podium this
I know who it is
this
now.
year.
Yeah,
but,
now I'm
but
connecting
he's someone
the
who
dots here.
carries a lot of weight in Kansas City, and his name has been thrown around quite a bit. So yeah, check that out on Wednesday, and next time I talk to you, we can see if I went and visited that one.
And you are a regular visitor of the greater Kansas City metropolitan area, too,
I am.
being a big Chiefs and Royals fan. So,
certainly Royals. I don't know. Chiefs is more my daughter's vibe, but
well, and with
Royals,
the big news
absolutely.
though,
I know the big news
with Travis and Taylor.
Oh my gosh, yeah. I texted my wife and daughter upon hearing that. It must have been like minutes after it happened, the engagement, and they were like, "Yeah, we know." So,
they had the push notification all ready to go as soon as it happened. Yeah. It's Mitch Sherman again with The Athletic. Also check out the Locked On podcast with he and Connor Happer covering all things Huskers and Big Ten. And this is the best time of the year right now. We are talking about a game, an upcoming opponent, and the next time we have a chance to talk, we'll actually have results. So, Mitch, safe travels over to Kansas City. Look forward to talking to you here down the road, but always great when we have a chance to catch up.
yeah, good to talk to you guys. Thanks.
Good stuff from Mitch Sherman again with The Athletic. And, there's something there about what Mitch was talking about, that success. And I know we do have one of the questions in our mailbag that we're going to get to here in a moment. But I think there's previous years, Grant, where you would define success in different ways in the first and second year of Matt Rule, or even in the first and second year of Scott Frost. You can go all the way back to Mike Riley, where there's, okay, how did the last season leave off? What's the continuity look like? What's the schedule look like? And this is where I do feel that Nebraska fans get a bad reputation when it comes to 2025 of your expectations are too unreasonable or unrealistic. And this has been the case the last 10 years, where I still feel like this is a humbled fan base with what they've been through over the last decade, that there's a lot of outside fans looking and say, well, all you guys think for success is going to be a national championship. That's not the case. Internally, that is not the case. So I do think that there is something to be said about where fans are now. But I think this is where we're looking at a year 3 under Matt Rule, where I think everybody's idea of success, much like what Mitch said, because there was really nothing that Mitch said that I disagreed with on, well, you could go this route for success. This is where I think everyone's kind of on the same page, where you're starting to look at that win-loss record, and there are certain parts of this team that you want, as we've said many times, your eyes should tell you the story of improvement.
I mean, until Mike Riley left, the measurement for success, I guess we're just going to answer this. We'll do this a little bit out of order because one of the questions this week is from Dan, who asks us, what does success look like this year for Nebraska? Pretty fitting question here for week 1. I think it's a tough deal because for a long time, really since Mike Riley left, the last season of Mike Riley, and ever since, the standard of success that most people were looking at was just get to a bowl game. Get to at least 6-6, 7-5. That was deemed successful. Okay, let's just get this figured out now, and we'll look beyond that after the fact. And so we're here now. We're living in the world that we've already seen Nebraska reach a bowl game for the first time in dang near 10 years. And so now you can start to look to other things to measure success. And I think there is a point where some of the fan base has been so focused on getting to that bowl game for so long that you've almost lost sight of like, okay, well, what is reasonable? And what is that next step? Because the goal has been for so long just get to a bowl game. For me, I agree a lot with what Mitch was saying about, look, you just need to win some close games.
Mm-hmm.
That is something that is a good metric for success.
Think about how far that can take a team that even guys that weren't a part of that whole one-score loss, that thing that really plagued Nebraska, if you can win a couple of those against
and so that
marketable opponents.
That takes me to what that next step is for me. I mean, it is getting a top 25 win this year against somebody, whether that's USC, maybe UCLA, maybe Iowa sneaks in there towards the end of the year. So getting a ranked win against somebody, that to me is a sign of success. And then additionally, I want to see that confidence that Matt Rule thinks his team will have or should have in 2025 in year 3 trickle over from the players to the fans to the point where as a fan base, there isn't this nervous energy that Nebraska has entering the fourth quarter. I know it's not a lot about the team, but I think that is a good example of success for the team this year. Is if the team can take the fans into the fourth quarter in November against USC or UCLA or Iowa or maybe even Penn State, and Nebraska has a 1-score lead or they're down 1 score, and there isn't this PTSD with everything that has gone wrong for Nebraska over the last 10 years. And so, that to me are 2 metrics for success that I'm looking at, maybe apart from wins, are, hey, can you get a ranked opponent victory? And then can you make the fan base comfortable in close games? And can you, as a team, be comfortable in close games? I think Mitch was spot on when he was talking about
I'll take that a step further, too, with the USCs of the world, the Penn States of the world. The tougher opponents on Nebraska's schedule. And I'm going to throw in Iowa because Mitch is right. That's going to be a close game. Until Nebraska can prove otherwise, it's going to be a close game. And so what I would look at is the teams that are deemed way more talented than Nebraska right now. Penn State, right? USC has got a lot of talent, okay? Does that gap shrink between Nebraska and Penn State where you're watching that game like, jeez, this is just, I mean, it's not.
It's like watching It's like you're watching not the same sport.
Remember the Saquon Barkley year out in State College,
or even 63-7 Ohio State, or like some of those sorts of games.
And even you saw glimpses of that last year when Nebraska took on a very talented Ohio State. Now it was an Ohio State team that obviously ends up winning the national championship. Remember, they were coming off that weird part of their schedule where they lost to Oregon in a heartbreaker on the road. Then they had the bye week. Then they played Nebraska, and they were kind of flat. They were answering a lot of questions about their defense. And so that team hadn't really found its identity. But the talent on the field was the Ohio State talent that we're used to, and Nebraska was right there with them. So are you still showing that part of it? So is that gap continuing to decrease between the very top echelon of the Big Ten and where Nebraska is continuing to build that? And then going back, speaking of mailbag, going back to a question we were asked last week, if this is still think that there is an offensive identity with this team, at least this year. And I think going forward, the way that they're recruiting in the key positions and the guy who's running this offense, this is where we went back to, what does that number have to look like this year with the offense?
Sure.
Staying close to just inside top 100, not going to cut it.
No.
Can you find yourself as a top 50 offense in the first full year of Dana Holgorsen and Dylan Raiola together? Can you make those improvements, especially the investment you put on the offensive line and at the skilled position? That to me also that's a number that we can measure and say, look what they're doing, look what they're averaging, and look where they are.
6 points better than a year ago, 7 points,
Yeah, absolutely, things like that. So as you know, it is our mailbag time.
Not the smoothest transition into the mailbag, but it was good, Dan, because we got from Mitch, who I thought had a really good answer into that, right into your question, and now we have a couple others from folks.
Yes, we do. And again, get your questions to us at HuskerHuddle@myboomerradio.com. TJ has become our regular
the man
mailbag question contributor here. So he said if we have time, he has a twofer for us. And yes, TJ will make time. You guys gave your record predictions. I'm going 7-5. Now, if you missed last week, you went 9-3. I went 8-4.
Yep.
TJ's going 7-5, and I think TJ's in the. I'm going to take it one step better than a year ago, which 7-5 regular season would be one game better than a year ago. But what is your best case, worst case record? I say 10-2 best case, 4-8 worst case. What do you think? Okay, so let's answer that first question. I think TJ, as far as his number of best case, I cannot see Nebraska being an 11-win team this year. I not for the sake of agreeing with a faithful listener or viewer, but yeah, I think there is a ceiling at 10. The worst case, I'm going to disagree. I think worst case scenario, this is going to sound crazy because you're going to say they went to one bowl game in how many years?
0-12. No, I'm kidding.
I think what they accomplished last year and what type of team they have coming back, I think they've established that floor. I'm going to say that floor right now is 6. So I think best case is 10-2, but I'm going to take that floor up. I'm going to say worst case is 6-6.
I think you're right about that. With the amount of talent they brought in and the way they've upgraded across the board, not only in terms of their personnel, but their coaching staff, look, 6-6 has to be the floor. If you're going below 6-6,
even with injuries,
some crazy things have to go wrong. And what Matt Rule said about the growth of the confidence and playing beyond, outplaying bad things, misfortune, poor officiating, whatever it might be that comes along your way, that was all garbage and not true. So I think you're right on that. 6-6 has to be the floor. Now, where I'll disagree is the ceiling. 11-1 to me would be the best case. And that's your Indiana type season from a year ago. Mm-hmm. Now, the reason I'm saying that is because I really only see one surefire loss on the board right now, and that's Penn State. I think everything else is within at least 60-40. And
that's
so
fair.
To me, like if we're just asking for the best case scenario, 11 wins, they win all the 50-50 games. That to me is best case there for TJ.
Okay. Second part of his question, losing to Cincinnati would be bad, but would it be worse than losing at Maryland or home to Northwestern? Because I would argue that those two games are worse than Cincy, but because it's the opening game, would it be worse to lose that game or to Maryland or Northwestern? TJ, you're absolutely right. There's so much made about this first game, Grant. We know that.
For sure.
There was Dublin, Nebraska, Northwestern. There was Week 0, Nebraska at Illinois. Okay, I remember the conversation, even going all the way back to Big Ten Media Days of those respective games, of players even acknowledging, yeah, we understand this game is massive. It's not just the first game; it's massive. And yes, there was a former coach, Bo Pelini, say it's the biggest game because it's the game that's on our schedule right now.
Mm-hmm.
But when we look at this season in its totality, and you're looking for the major step forward, if you were to say beat Cincinnati, with all of the hype, you're playing at an NFL stadium, you've got the majority of the crowd that is there on your side. There is that adrenaline alone, and first game mistakes, maybe Nebraska makes fewer than Cincinnati, but they win that game. But say they drop one, I think it was going to be a very bad Maryland team, or even worse, Northwestern at home. I have a lot of respect for David Braun, but that team is still, I think, at least a year, if not 2 years away from being a competitive bowl type team. Those to me would be far worse. Either one of those would be far worse than a loss to Cincinnati.
I would say Northwestern would be the worst of those three by far, just because of where it falls on the schedule.
Yeah, you're looking at regression.
Right, because you're late in the year at that point. You're going into an October where you have to face USC, UCLA, Iowa, and Penn State. This is the teeth of your schedule, the prove-it games, and you want to have as much momentum as possible, and that obviously would kill it. I mean, it would completely murder it. Maryland, I don't think nearly as badly. Like, you can still recover with the win over Minnesota, maybe. But Northwestern is just this is a game that you have to win going into, again, just a real hairy month of November. If you lose to Cincinnati, that's definitely bad too. You just get off on a horrible foot. We talked a lot about confidence during this segment. Some of that being shattered is a problem. But there's still a bunch more double-digit games remaining in your season. So, you can still recover from that.
Yeah. Good questions from TJ. This one's from
Jordan in Minnesota.
Jordan, yes.
And he asks, beyond the obvious names like Dylan Raiola Emmett Johnson. Which under-the-radar player, whether a returning vet or a true freshman, is making the biggest impression and could be a surprise breakout star this season? He says particularly on the defensive side of the ball, and I will allow you to give offensive and defensive, if you can do a pick for each.
You know who my defensive one is. I've brought it up at least twice, if not 3 times on this podcast. Now, in our 5th episode, I'm going to do it again for defense, and that's Ceyair Wright. I don't think we're talking enough about Ceyair Wright. Now, he gets the single digit. He gets the recognition of being one of the vocal leaders, but this is a guy that I just don't know people are paying enough attention to. And I'm not talking about the Nebraska camp and the fans. I think the fans know Ceyair Wright. They know his capabilities, but collectively, a guy that could really be the linchpin of this defense, smack dab in the middle of that defense, and being Ceyair Wright. Now, yes, there could be rotational things going on, but his playmaking ability, when we talk about a defense that needs to step that part of it up, and also being able to help out that front 7 that collectively is inexperienced together, I think Ceyair Wright, healthy, the ability to cover, but also to stop the run, to make athletic plays that a defensive back, now converted into linebacker, can make. And we've seen him. He looks good. I mean, he physically looks really good. So I just think there's a lot about Ceyair Wright being a big part of this defense, being that playmaker that he can be. There's just, I don't think, and then here's the other thing I'll throw in.
Mm-hmm.
He's being coached and developed the last couple of years by a guy that you and I both talked about many times, Rob Dvorak.
Right.
I don't think also gets
flies under the
credit.
radar. He flies under the radar for sure.
Rob Dvorak
that's a
is
good pick.
An extraordinary developer when it comes to that position. So I'm going to have Ceyair Wright. Offensively, this is going to be a bit of a wild card, but I'm going to go to the tight end position, and I'm going to say Carter Nelson.
Okay.
Because I think, again, going off of what he learned as a freshman, settling a little bit more into the tight end position, but it's not the inline. We want you to be able to be a nasty physical blocker too. We want to utilize your athleticism. That is going to be a very, I think, interesting rotation with how they use the tight ends. But in this offense and how Carter Nelson is built right now, I think there are going to be a lot of favorable matchups for Carter Nelson. And I think that year, just enough of the action that he saw last year, I think is going to be very big. So I'm going to say Carter Nelson is my under-the-radar offensive weapon.
So I have 2 picks, and then we got to quickly get to Ceyair Wright, who I had a chance to talk with one-on-one earlier this week. But my pick on the defensive side of the ball is Williams Nwaneri. I mean, he spoke to the media this week, 6'7", massive frame. This is, again, we heard from Mitch earlier, a guy that in the spring seemed like he was a year away. Doesn't feel like that right now. He's made big gains over the course of the summer. Reminds me a ton of Randy Gregory. There's a ton of similarities there. Yeah. So that's a guy I like, and I want to have an eye on Thursday night in Cincinnati. Can he get after the quarterback and affect the passing game of the opposing offense? Then on the offensive side of the ball, I think there's probably an argument to be made for Quentin Clark, but I'm going to go with a guy who maybe is a bit more well-known, but I still feel like has been overshadowed a lot this fall camp, and that's Isaiah Hunter. Mm-hmm. Dane Key is just he's got a great personality, and he has the offseason acquisition #1 sort of allure tied to him. But this is a guy in Isaiah Hunter who could really be helpful this year for Nebraska in the passing game, especially as attention on the defensive side of the ball for Nebraska's opponents are drawn towards Dane Key. So that's a guy I've got an eye on. And now,
another guy that we probably could have put on our under the radar, but he put himself on the radar at the end of last year. Ceyair Wright. Grant caught up with him. Give this one a listen and view.
Folks, welcome back. It is Huskers All Access, brought to you by Access Bank, here for a reason. My name is Grant Hansen, here alongside Nebraska corner Ceyair Wright. And, well, Ceyair, you were named a captain just recently. What does that mean to you as a guy who just joined this team as a transfer from USC a year ago to be back in year 2 and be named a captain by your teammates?
Yeah, do I hold it or?
Oh,
okay. Yeah. Sorry. First, thank you for having me. I mean, it means the world to me, honestly. It's a huge honor, especially considering Coach Rule hasn't done captains really in the past. You know, it's normally just been like a week by week type of situation. But I think, with him pushing forward the idea of a player-led team, And me, obviously I came in here last year, and being somebody that was older, having experience, it's been great. And getting able to connect with my teammates and get to know everybody and pour into everybody and allow them to pour into me is led to me feeling like I have taken a leadership role. So I'm nothing short of honored and really appreciative for my teammates voting for me to be in that position.
There's been a lot of talk about this new age of college football, and the transfer portal is just a part of it. But there will be 6 starters out there on Thursday night that are going to be, and for the rest of the season, hopefully as well. But they're new guys from the transfer portal. It's just a part of it. How have you been able to help them maybe assimilate to this team and go through the process that you did a year ago?
Yeah, I think it definitely is. Nebraska is definitely a different place than many other places, in terms of the standards and the process that we abide by. And so sometimes that is difficult to transition to. So I think that, my experience being that I came from another school was, I'm able to help players coming in, just telling them kind of what they need to do, or if they make a mistake, pushing them forward, knowing that it's not intentional, that it's just them getting through the kinks of the transition. So I think that I've been able to help as best I can with anybody that's transferred in, and I'm really thankful and glad that they've been able to make that transition successfully.
How have you evolved as a player and a person over your last year here?
I would say that I've definitely grown up a lot as a player and as a man. I think that this is my first time where I've been away from home, living on my own and getting to experience life for myself. And so doing that, I think that I've gotten a lot of time with myself to, just learn about myself and, what makes me tick and what makes me happy, what makes me, driven and things like that. So I think that it's definitely been great for my personal development. And then I've had a lot more time to, hone in on my skills on the field, just on my own or, with my teammates. So I think that I've developed as a player in that aspect as well.
Who gives you the biggest challenge at the wide receiver position when you're going one-on-one in practice?
I got to say all of them. I think we have a really, really great receiver room. We got from top to bottom. We've got young guys that are really talented that I'm excited to see them get on the field this year, and we have some veteran players as well that are also really talented. So I think we're going to have a really great season from the receivers.
One guy who's drawn a lot of praise recently is Donovan Jones. Recently, Coach Butler said he was a third starter out there at that cornerback position. Tell us about him and how you've seen him grow and develop.
Yeah, I think it's great to see Donovan on the field, just knowing that he's such a young player. But one of my favorite things about him is just that he's so receptive to everything. He's really willing to learn, and he's able to play it at any position. So I think that is going to carry him very far in his career, and I'm excited to see him make some plays when he gets out there.
Lastly, Ceyair, what can Nebraska fans expect from the black shirt secondary this year?
Yeah, I think you can expect a lot of great plays. We're going to fly around, we're going to get to the ball, and we're going to compete. So.
He's Ceyair Wright, and this has been Huskers All Access, brought to you by Access Bank, here for a reason.
Good stuff there, Grant, with Ceyair Wright. Big
so
parts.
Fun.
Yes. I wish we could play the entire conversation that we were having before and after, but a good dude and still has an eye on acting a little bit as well. So, this is the most important time, right? Because we're going to give you the prediction sure to go wrong, Nebraska, Cincinnati, and we're going to give you our prediction of what we think is going to happen in the Nebraska-Cincinnati game here in just a moment. But as I mentioned at the beginning of the show, huge weekend of college football. Ohio State, Texas, Clemson, LSU. Let's take our shot at these games. I want to start out in Columbus. Ohio State defending national champions against Texas. I feel like there's been a lot of hype about this Texas team, preseason number 1. I get it. Arch Manning and really Sark. I think Sark has really changed the culture over there. But I thought Ohio State, after that game against Nebraska, where they were kind of searching for an identity. They had lost to Oregon previously. They had the bye week. Then they'd survive against Nebraska. It seemed like there was an edginess to Ryan Day and this team, but something that could have been their undoing, I think ended up benefiting them. And I think they really were able to sort of sharpen that edge into a positive way. They run that, despite the loss to Michigan, to a national championship. I just feel like you're breaking in a new quarterback in Julian Sayin, but you're doing so at home with 90,000, 100,000 of your closest friends supporting you, and you've got Jeremiah Smith. It's a 2.5 Ohio State favorite in this one. They are the favorite at home, so a neutral site game. Texas would be a slight favorite. 2.5 is what Ohio State's lane. I'm taking Ohio State to win it and cover 27-23.
Okay, so Texas here is, again, a 2.5-point dog. The get-in price for this game
in Columbus, Ohio, $330 right now. If you want to go right now.
Okay.
Most people are not doing that.
Nebraska plays Thursday, so you can go.
66 degrees at kickoff. It's going to be a beautiful game. This is such a great weekend to start this season off. All right, Arch Manning. I think when you think about the quarterbacks in this game, are you leaning Arch or are you leaning Julian Sand? And
neutral site, I would take Arch.
And I know this is not a neutral site, and Ohio State's going to be jacked up and ready to go. But I'm going to lean with who I think is the better quarterback here in Arch Manning. Okay. So I will take Texas to win this game, but this is about as close to a coin flip as you can get. Usually home field advantage is worth about a field goal in Vegas. Yeah. That's what you're seeing right here for Ohio State with that 2.5. And so, look, you got to take that field goal out of the equation. This is about as close to as you can get to an even line. You have a ton of talented receivers in this game. Brian Wingo for Texas. Look, he's probably not
Jeremiah Smith.
Yeah, he's probably not Jeremiah Smith.
We can agree the best player on the field is in an Ohio State uniform.
I agree with that.
Okay.
I agree with that 100%. But I think it's just going to be tough for Ohio State with the talent that is all over the place in this game to win with the worst quarterback, even if they're at home. And I think that's enough reason for me to say Texas wins this one. We'll go 24-20 Texas.
Ooh, okay. The Death Valley Bowl, this one will take place on Clemson's home turf. A little bit of talking with Brian Kelly in the offseason. Dabo Swinney not biting, but look, there's been since the Deshaun Watson, Trevor Lawrence era of Clemson, that feel of underachievement with this Clemson football program as everyone has evolved in the NIL and transfer portal world. Clemson has been a little bit more steadfast with what Dabo Swinney wants to do. This is a team I have circled to keep an eye out for because you got experienced quarterbacks in this game, period, but for Clemson. But they have been very hard on the recruiting right now, too. I'm not going to waste anybody's time. I'm just going with the home teams in these ones, though. But I think Clemson will pull this off. Again, it's a slight favorite towards Clemson. I think that number is right at 3.5. Clemson, I think, covers this one. I'm going to take them 28-21. Also, don't forget Brian Kelly's recent history and season openers, especially in marquee matchups. Over-under on that one, by the way, 56.5. So I'm going to hit the slight under on that 28-21 Clemson.
Talk about history and season openers, not even Brian Kelly's. How about just LSU's in general?
Yeah.
The Tigers have not won a season opening game in 6 years. 2019 was the last time that they did it.
So they're due.
And it was against Georgia Southern. So I don't foresee that trend changing here. And credit to LSU in this era of college football for continuing to schedule difficult and early.
100%.
But I just I don't see them winning this game. By the way, $300 to get into this one too, which makes sense.
Yes.
But Clemson, I think, is the more talented team, and Clemson should win this game. Look, if they want to reinsert themselves into the national conversation and to elevate things beyond what they did a year ago, they should win this game and win convincingly. LSU, I just do not trust in these early games. There's plenty of evidence as to why.
All right, Nebraska, Cincinnati, Arrowhead Stadium, 8 o'clock kickoff. And, of course, you can catch the games on Boomer Radio. We will have it on 1490, 97.3, and also KCRO. 660. Great signal. Great signal there, by the way. Nebraska is a 6.5-point favorite. That's pretty much where this thing opened up, so it hasn't moved much. The over-under 54.5. Money line, Nebraska minus 240, Cincinnati plus 195. ESPN Football Power Index has Nebraska with a winning probability of 66.2%. So we look at this game, and there's a lot of ways you can be objective or subjective, because everything that we want to be very objective about, we still haven't seen in real time, in game reps right now. But I do think culture is a big thing. And I think Matt Rule, and I feel with what they have been able to establish, there's a reason that these Matt Rule year 3 teams have really worked. And I think there's varying degrees of why between the personnel, but also the schedule. And I think there's a combination of that I think works out for Nebraska. I had 8-4, you had 9-3 for the season. And we both had Nebraska winning this football game. And I'm going to tell you why I have Nebraska beating Cincinnati in this one, because I think what they do offensively, Dana Holgorsen, and what he brings to the table, having that winter, that spring, and a full fall, working with Dylan Raiola, working with a new complement of weapons, both in the skill position and at the offensive line. I think this is kind of the exciting welcome to Nebraska moment, not only for some of these new faces, but especially Dana Holgorsen in his first full season as the OC with the guys that he has. I think he is going to have this offense very wide open. I think they're going to take their shots, but I also think we're going to see Emmett Johnson and this backfield be able to have their moments in this game. I love what this offense, I think, is going to do against Cincinnati. I think they can neutralize Corleone to where, yeah, he's going to be disruptive at times. That's going to happen. But I think there are going to be a lot of explosives in this game for Nebraska. I love where this offense is going to be. I have Nebraska offensively getting 31 points, scoring 31 points, that is. But I do have them giving up 20 points. I think the defense at times, and this is where Sorsby's athleticism, he's going to extend plays. There might be a couple times where they've got him in a favorable third and long, but he extends it, gets to the sticks, keeps the defense on the field. I think there's going to be some busted plays, busted assignments, and I think that's to be expected, but I do think there'll be some points for Cincinnati. I got 31-20 Nebraska.
So I'm going to go a little bit lower scoring here. I think Nebraska, we see some pop from the offensive side of things, but we also see some control, and I think that comes from the defense. Nebraska's defense is able to contain, for the most part, Cincinnati's running game. They're going to limit Joe Royer, the tight end senior for this team, along with Brendan Sorsby, who's their team's junior quarterback. And then, of course, Cyrus Allen, the transfer, averaged about 18 yards a catch over the last couple of years. He was at Louisiana Tech and then Texas A&M before Cincinnati. So those are some of the key names to watch on the offensive end for the Bearcats, but I think Nebraska is able to keep them in check, and the offense, as a result, doesn't really have to try to put up a big number if it doesn't want to. So I'm going to go with something in the neighborhood of 27-10. Nebraska gets the win. You see what you want to see from Dylan Raiola in the offense, despite maybe some clunky moments from time to time. And the defense does enough. They're able to make at least Cincinnati limited in terms of its passing game and its abilities there, and is able to, again, give that offense that stability, the sense of control that you need to succeed. And if it doesn't play out, if it plays out differently than that, if it plays out in a Nebraska loss or something that's a little bit more ominous, we'll come back and things will be drastically different as we look ahead to Akron and Houston Christian and some of the games that are coming in the days ahead. But I think Nebraska pretty much exerts its will throughout this game.
It'll be an electric environment, heavy Nebraska crowd out there at Arrowhead Stadium. By the way, we both have the under 54.5 on this one too. So there it is. Can't wait to kick this thing off, and hope you enjoy that. When we come back, we'll be talking about a result. We'll be talking about Nebraska getting ready for Akron. What will the conversation be? Well, you have to check it out next week. It's here. This is fun.
We made it.
The weather's going to be great too. It's just awesome, awesome, awesome. For Grant Hansen, I am Nick Hanley. You've been listening to the Husker Huddle podcast. Enjoy the game. Enjoy your Labor Day weekend, and we will talk to you next week.